And happy Tuesday, June 13th, 2023, and welcome to a brand new edition of what I like to call the Isolation Cabin. I am your host, the vegan you believe in, Kurt Cadet, aka Conscious Kurt, in the flesh as always. And here on the Isolation Cabin, I like to talk about the different forms isolation takes on, whether it's positive or negative, the effect it has on us and our mental health, and what we could do to have a better handle and understanding of it, to have a better quality of our lives going forward. I want to talk to you guys today about something that really harms our mental health and also more than anything else really harms our growth. And that one thing I want to talk about today is settling. At one point or another, many of us have settled in a certain place in our lives. Whether we realized it or don't realize it, we just ended up doing it. And it could be for a variety of reasons or variety of situations may have caused us to. But at the end of the day, sometimes we simply settle. We sometimes settle out of a lack of confidence. We settle out of fear and uncertainty. And also a big reason why we settle is comfort. And hey, I'm guilty of it too. I've definitely settled more times than I like to remember in my life. And in many cases, it's very easy to settle. But unfortunately, one thing I've had to learn the hard way, and I'm sure many of you had to as well, is that easy doesn't always mean better. And sometimes when we settle for what is safe, what's easy, what's comfortable, we usually don't gain much from it, and it usually ends up not being fulfilling, and it ends up not making us happy in the long run. Yeah, because anytime something becomes comfortable and familiar and normal, even if it's something that's bad, it's not really an easy thing to walk away from, and it's also not an easy habit to break. And once that thing disappears from your life and disappears from your daily routine, it can feel really weird without it. It could feel very uncomfortable without it and very anxious without it. And instead of dealing with that anxiousness and dealing with that lack of comfort, people just cling on to what's familiar and cling on to what's normal and settle for what's normal instead of trying something new. And also many people settle and many people just take what they can get simply out of fear. Because whatever they're clinging on to, they feel like that's all they have, that's all they deserve. And if they lose that, then they're fucked, they're screwed, they feel like they have nothing. And out of that fear of having to go through that scenario and all that uncertainty, they'll cling on to that shit as hard as they can and just keep everything as is. And sadly, when you just settle for something out of fear, as I mentioned in last week's episode, you end up losing twice. Because you end up scared, afraid, and anxious of losing that thing. But yet at the same time, that very thing you're holding on to, at the end of the day, isn't really something worth having. But that fear shit is a motherfucker. And that fear shit is very hard to kick sometimes for many people. I get that. But damn does it screw us out of some good things in life. And that's one of the ways it does it, by making us so afraid of what's on the other side that we just settle for whatever we have, even if it's not really something worth having that much anyway. And also that fear factor also goes into another thing, a lack of confidence. When you feel like a certain level is as high a level as you can get to, so you just decide to stay there and not try to progress further and grow further and obtain more in the process. And when you let that lack of confidence hinder you, you keep yourself from potentially gaining more from your life than you maybe expected that you could. But you're not confident enough that you can do more, and you don't believe in yourself enough that you can do more, that you just decide to stay where you are. And when you stay where you are, that's all you're going to get, and that's all you're going to know. And the longer you do that, the more isolated and lonely you're going to feel. So what areas of life do people usually settle in the most? One area I definitely learned where people like to settle is in their hometowns. I grew up in the same place for most of my life. I lived there roughly total, I would say about 20 years. And once I got to that end point, I knew it was time to go and time to move on. But in many cases, a lot of people, they don't get to that point. They don't get to the point where they want to move on and try another place and try somewhere else and be around new people. They stay in the exact same place, exact same house, have the exact same friends, and just live that way their whole lives. And look, I know there's something special about everybody's hometown, and obviously a lot about it that makes it feel like home. But eventually you have to get to a point where you want to explore somewhere else. Even if you don't leave forever and eventually you do come back, you should always make the effort to explore and live in new places. I'm not saying it won't be scary. I'm not saying it won't have an adjustment period. But if you get out of that comfort zone and live in a new place and meet new people and open yourself up to maybe trying new things and trying a new lifestyle, it'll give you a new lease on life. And overall, it'll make you a more well-rounded person. Because the more places you live, the more things you adapt into your life, and the more cultures you're exposed to and things you're exposed to, the more open-minded it'll eventually make you. But if you stay in the same place, the same town, hang out with the same people, go to the same bars, same restaurants, same hangouts your whole life, and never see anything else out there beyond that, don't be surprised if there's not that much excitement in your life. Yeah, just staying in your hometown your whole life and never living anywhere else, it's kind of a depressing way to live. Also, another place where people settle in, very much so, is in their careers and their jobs. And definitely I'm also guilty of this too. Many of us get to a point where we're just, I guess you could say, comfortable at our job and feel safe at our job enough where we don't want to rock the boat. We make a certain amount of money, we have a certain schedule we like, or we have certain coworkers we're used to being around all the time, or just simply just a job that we're used to and we feel like we can handle and we don't want to challenge ourselves beyond that. So as a result, we just stay where we are. And usually when you do that, you're going to end up stagnant. Or maybe there's some cases where you don't have the passion or the ambition or the confidence to maybe go after something more or go after a different position or maybe a different career that you want. So instead of going after that, you just stay and stick with what you have. Even if what you have and where you're at isn't something that even makes you happy or makes you feel fulfilled. But because it's safe, because it's familiar, because it's normal, and because you may be scared of what might be on the other side of it, you just stay with it. And many people just stay with it for years and even decades. And before they know it, they're at a certain age and certain place in their life, and they ask themselves where all the time went. And yeah, it's a shitty feeling. When you spend all that time and all those years just settling and just taking whatever you can get, it's like I said before, very unrewarding. That's the best way I could put settling in any way. It's just unrewarding. It may be easy in some cases, it may be comfortable in some cases, but the one thing I can't deny is that it won't make you feel fulfilled. And also, very sadly, another area where people settle in the most is in their relationships. Many relationships that go on for years and that last for years, there's definitely a lot of effort and a lot of hard work that goes into that. But there's also many cases where many relationships will go on for years that probably should not go on for as long as they do. But the reason why they go on for as long as they do is because the people in that relationship probably just decided to settle with it. They might be at a certain place, a certain age in their lives where maybe they don't want to start over. They don't want to start dating again. They don't want to shake up the life that they have going on because they like certain aspects of it. So as a result, they just stay in a relationship that's not even working. A relationship where they don't feel happy, they don't feel fulfilled, they're not having any fun, they're not being satisfied, they're not being catered to, or whatever it may be. When you settle in your relationship life and you just settle for whatever person you're with, even though you may not even be in love with them like that, it's not going to be a happy ending. Because relationships in many ways are the easiest thing to settle in, because we might meet a person that will finally be willing to put up with us and deal with whatever stuff we have. And we may feel like we can't find anybody else that will be willing to do that. And so we just decide to stay with that person, even if that person may not even be the right one for us, or one that even makes us happy at all. But you're just so afraid of being alone and so afraid of maybe having to start over that you just stay where you are. And I think that's why I've kind of maybe taken a long hiatus for dating in the last few years, is because I didn't want to just date anybody just for the sake of dating them, just because I didn't want to be alone. If I'm going to date somebody long term, it has to be something that I can really sink my teeth into, and that I could really see myself like putting in the work in and putting in the effort, and knowing that it's not something I'm just settling for. That shit is nowheresville. I know I've talked about it on this podcast before about not living an isolated life and not, keeping yourself away from meeting new people and dating new people. I'm definitely all for that. But if I meet someone, date someone, and I realize that maybe they're not the right match for me, I'm not just going to keep dating them and keep going out with them just because I have nothing else better to do, or just because I'm afraid of being by myself. That shit will end up bad for me, and that shit is also not fair to that other person either. So that's why I've had an extra emphasis on these last few years about not settling, especially in the relationships that you're in. If you're really not happy with a certain person, if you really don't see a long-term future with that certain person, then it's not worth it. And the sooner you make that choice and do something about it, the better off you will be. And hey, I know it's not easy to walk away from some of these scenarios and, not settle for a certain position, certain relationship, or certain place in life. And that the most challenging thing to do is go after something more and strive for something more. But as hard as it may be and as challenging as it may be, the rewards, the benefits, and all the blessings that can come from all that in the end make it all worthwhile. And it may not be easy, it may be a struggle at times, but the good things waiting for you on the other side of it are the things that are going to make you feel fulfilled and make you happy and make you feel more than anything else like you're alive. Because that's what it's all about. It's all about living. And by settling and just sticking with whatever you have, that's not living. Because if you just settle for what you have, that's all you're ever going to get, and that's as far as you're ever going to go. But when you realize you deserve better and you start holding yourself to a higher standard and demand more for yourself, then don't be surprised at all that you gain from that attitude. Because you could either get busy living or you could get busy dying. And by choosing not to settle and choosing to hold yourself to a higher standard and choosing to go after what you deserve, then you're getting busy living. And that's the best kind of busy that you can ever be. Well, that's all the time I have for you guys this week. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And like I've said before, I'm not a licensed doctor or a therapist, but I do have a lot of experience in my personal life and a lot of these issues I talk about on this podcast. So I use this platform to talk about these issues in the hopes of helping others get over them and have an easier time getting over them than I did when I went through them. And if you ever want to connect with me or talk to me about any of these issues, you can follow me on any of my social media sites, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Look up my first and last name, Kurt Cadet. Send me a message, send me an email, whichever you prefer. Also, you can listen to this podcast on Spotify as well as Spreaker and YouTube. Leave a comment on any of the episodes. Let me know what you like about them, what you don't like about them. And I will be here for a long time to come here on the Isolation Cabin, talking about these issues of isolation, the good and the bad, the effects it has on us and our mental health, and what we can do to have a better understanding of it and a better quality of our lives in the future. So until next time, this is Kurt Cadet, aka Conscious Kurt, for another edition of the Isolation Cabin, and I will see you guys next week. Hope you guys have a good week. Take care, God bless, and don't be an asshole in real life or on social media. Take care.